I committed one of modern gaming's cardinal sins. I pre-ordered a game. Yeah, go ahead, judge me all the way to Atropos, but hear me out, because I actually had a reason. A very specific one. I pre-ordered Saros, because I just finished Returnal, and my brain is fried. And I'm still sitting here, staring at the menu, trying to process what the hell I just played. Returnal is a game I was not supposed to like, not even a little. But somehow, Housemarque pulled off a miracle and blindsided me completely. Maybe it's recency bias, maybe I'm still high off the credits that rolled 5 minutes ago, but let me say this. This might be one of the strongest gaming experiences I've ever had, and easily the strongest in years. The box had been sitting on a shelf in my living room since it came with my PS5 back in 2022, completely untouched. I love hard games. I eat Souls-likes for breakfast.
Sure you do.
They more or less eat me for breakfast. But you get it, they are my go-to genre. Whether I'm happy, sad or depressed, you get it. But I also have to be honest with myself. I'm almost 40, and my attention span has never been, let's say, one of my strongest qualities. Gang boss fights in Souls games have always been my nemesis ever since Dark Souls 1. So the idea of a bullet hell exploding around me, forcing me to track every corner of the screen, didn't sound appealing at all. And on top of that, I had never played a roguelike or roguelite or whatever the hell you want to call it in my entire life. Starting a game over and over again after a single mistake, that sounds less like fun and more like punishment to me. If you ask me, the invention of sticks of Marika in Elden Ring is one of the best things that ever happened to gaming. So yeah, I never felt the urge to touch that box with the astronaut lady on the cover sitting comfortably next to my TV. Until the hype around Saros started building. The next game from Returnal's developers, and I thought, alright, what the hell. I always assumed Returnal was just a ridiculously frenetic shooter trying to give you a seizure with the amount of glowing projectiles flying at you. And oh my god, I was very right. It is exactly that. But it's also so much more. Yes, it's an adrenaline rush. But I never expected it to hit me on such a deeply personal level, or to mix in some serious Silent Hill 2 psychological horror shit into its core gameplay loop. And yeah, I'm gonna spoil the whole thing here, or at least give you my lacking interpretation. So if you haven't played Returnal and want to experience its mysteries yourself, this is your chance to leave. And you really should play it. It's worth it. Alright, listen. I cannot split my attention. I genuinely believe I'm physically incapable of focusing on more than one enemy at a time. Ornstein and Smoke are still waiting for me to beat them solo without summoning someone to carry me through the fight. So the idea of dodging a screen full of projectiles that somehow take up more space than should be even possible, that sounded like the definition of anti-fun. In Returnal you're basically playing the floor is lava, except the air is lava too. And the game looked so arcadey in the trailers, it just didn't appeal to me at all. And you know what? I was right. At least at first. I didn't enjoy the game in the beginning. The first few hours were a solid meh. Not because of the visuals, but because I sucked. Exactly as expected. I kept getting destroyed by things I couldn't even see. Enemies hitting me from off-screen, those damn bat-like creatures diving in from behind the camera like it's New Year's Eve. I had no idea what to do. I hated it. I even bought the original Sony 3D Pulse headphones because a person on the internet said it would help me locate danger more easily. I was still face down on the ground in the third room of the overgrown ruins. I started to hate the dark, grey aesthetic of the game's first biome. But slowly, something changed. I started to understand the game. Despite what all the flashy YouTube videos suggested, Returnal isn't necessarily a fast-paced game, or at least it doesn't have to be. It's not about running in guns blazing, it's more about not getting hit. That realization changed everything for me. Instead of rushing into rooms like I saw people do on YouTube, I slowed down. I started playing for survival. Clearing enemies from behind the doors before actually getting into the room, prioritizing defensive upgrades, more protection, better healing, weapons that do the work for me. Shout out to the Electropylon driver, by the way. That thing can carry even the least skilled player through the game, and I know what I'm talking about. There's no better feeling than watching a swarm of drones fly into your electric web and die while you barely lift a finger. In the first biome, the overgrown ruins, I died more times than I'd like to admit. Those forests and statues still haunt me in my dreams. But in the second biome, I started surviving longer, at least until those damned Severed showed up.
Yeah, fuck you very much.
From the third biome onward, it took me maybe 2 or 3 attempts per biome, because the game finally made sense. And when it clicks, that feeling is more satisfying than almost anything I've experienced in gaming in recent years. That said, most of that satisfaction doesn't come from the game rewarding your character. It comes from you getting better. Returnal doesn't really go out of its way to help you progress. You see, I had never played a roguelike before, because I guess I like myself too much to spend hours grinding the same levels of a game over and over again. But from what I understood, the very essence of roguelikes is that your character gradually improves and gets stronger with every death, making subsequent runs shorter and far less painful. Well, Returnal gives that idea a nice big middle finger. Sure, there are a few permanent upgrades, like the melee blade or the grappling hook, which lets you traverse certain areas faster, but the core progression system is basically exclusively RNG. Whether you find the best items, like the astronaut figure that revives you once or artifacts that boost your integrity, is entirely random. And honestly, that sucks. Permanent progression is almost non-existent. Yes, if you are a speedrunner, you can rush straight to newly unlocked biomes after dying. But unless you have god tier reflexes, you won't get far without rebuilding your gear, health, protection, damage, all the stuff you just lost. So if you're an average player, like me, you'll end up replaying previous biomes, hoping to find something useful. And if you get hit by a random projectile along the way, well, back to square one. The real progression isn't in the game, it's in you learning. You learn patterns, you learn when to heal and when to increase your maximum health, how to manage your obolites, the game's currency, and when to cut your losses and restart a bad run after the RNG gods decided to take a dump all over your dinner plate. And somehow, that becomes satisfying too, in its own weird way. I honestly can't imagine finishing Returnal without taking damage. The fights get so messy, sooner or later you will get hit. Sure, there are probably people out there beating it flawlessly, the same people who beat Elden Ring using vegetables, but that's not me. If you're like me, you'll need to gear up, and the biomes aren't exactly short. A full run through 3 biomes, after which thankfully we get a checkpoint, took me around 2 to 3 hours. So when you lose all that progress because of one mistake, it hurts a lot. But that's also what gives the game its edge. If I die in most games, I reload and move on. If I die in Returnal, I lose everything. The stakes are insane. Would I prefer Returnal without the roguelike structure? Honestly, no. I probably wouldn't have even played it otherwise. Without it, it's just another fast-paced shooter. And even if it's great, that's not what puts me in. It was exactly the start over loop that hooked me, that made me stick with it. Because I wanted to beat it. I wanted to stand back up every time it knocked me down, open the door again, and show Housemarque who's the boss. Would I have liked stronger permanent progression?
Hell yeah.
It probably would have made the game more enjoyable for me. But I'm glad I stuck with it, despite the frustration, because otherwise I would have missed the thing I didn't come for, but I absolutely stayed for. When I started Returnal, I expected an insane, frenetic action ride, with the amount of visual effects competing with a boomer's PowerPoint presentation. And I got exactly that. What I didn't expect was a deeply personal family story, a fair share of psychological terror, and surprise surprise, I got that too. A few weeks ago I finished the original Silent Hill 2 for the first time, and I was haunted by its story for weeks afterward. The last thing I expected was to be thrown into a similar state of mind by a simple third-person shooter. And yet, here I am, completely caught off guard and unable to stop thinking about Returnal's plot. We play as Celine, an astronaut scientist whose ship Helios crashes on a distant planet called Atropos, leaving her stranded. The goal is simple: escape the planet and return home. Very quickly, Celine realizes that the planet is far from that, and its surviving fauna is very enthusiastic about getting rid of the unwelcome intruder. Soon after beginning her journey, Celine discovers a human corpse, and after closer inspection, she realizes it's her. In fact, it's just one of many bodies she'll come across in her attempt to return home. The surface of Atropos is essentially littered with corpses, all of them belonging to a single individual, Celine herself. And it doesn't take long before you add yet another one to the pile, because you will die, again and again. And every time you do, you wake up next to the wreck of your crashed ship Helios, starting your desperate attempt to escape all over again, hoping to make it just a little bit further this time. As if it wasn't enough that Atropos keeps bringing Celine back again and again, that death is nothing more than a good night's sleep in this place. Sooner or later, you'll come across something so out of place that you start questioning everything. In the middle of nowhere, on this distant alien planet, you find a house, Celine's own home from back on Earth. And this is the moment where the game completely shifts tone and hits you with some low-key PT vibes. Inside the house, the perspective changes to first person. The game slows down, almost becoming a walking simulator, and the story takes center stage. It's also here that you encounter the astronaut for the first time, an unknown threatening entity that follows you throughout the rest of the game, never revealing its true intentions. You're never quite sure whether it's trying to help you complete your mission or whether it will ultimately be your undoing. If you manage to beat 3 rather lengthy biomes and their respective bosses in a single run without dying, you help Celine reach her goal. She escapes the hostile planet Atropos, returns home, becomes her country's hero, the woman who survived, and goes on to live a long, fulfilled life. But death is still death. Whether it comes from a glowing projectile or from natural causes, Atropos doesn't care. And so decades later, after dying of old age, Celine wakes up again, next to the wreck of Helios, back in hell. 63 years later, the planet has changed, reclaimed by vegetation, but you're back where you started, back to square one. And it's here in Returnal's Act 2 that Celine's personal story really begins to unfold. In one of the house sequences, we meet Celine's young son, Helios, a child who is, quite clearly, neglected by his mother. Celine is far more focused on her dream of becoming an astronaut than on spending time with him. Piece by piece, we begin to assemble the puzzle. Celine was a bad mother, just like her own mother had been to her. Her greatest and perhaps only priority in life was to become an astronaut, to explore new worlds. And Helios, he simply couldn't compete with this great dream. One night, Celine and Helios are involved in a car crash. She drives off a bridge and into a river. She manages to free herself from the driver's seat, but Helios, trapped in the back seat, is not so lucky. Celine emerges from the water and leaves him behind. In the game, every time you die, you respawn next to your ship Helios with a message shown on screen. Warning, Helios abandoned. But I never read anything more into the phrase than a simple message from Celine's suit's electronic systems. But once I understood the story, that line hit very differently. In the beginning, I compared Returnal to Silent Hill 2, and that might sound pretentious, a crazy exaggeration. But this game, just like Silent Hill 2, is packed with symbolism and deeply rooted in personal trauma. You're shown hints of the truth right from the very beginning, you just don't realize it at that time. The boss of Biome 4 plays Don't Fear the Reaper on an organ, the same song that was playing on the radio the night of the crash. And in the game's final fight, you're literally shooting off the boss's boobs. If that doesn't scream bad mother symbolism, I don't know what does. Whether the crash was an accident or intentional is left open to interpretation, just like much of Returnal's lore. But what seems to be fairly clear is this: Helios was a burden to Celine, an obstacle standing in the way of her dream of becoming an explorer of distant worlds. the very dream symbolized by the ever-present faceless astronaut figure. Is Atropos a real place or just a manifestation of Celine's guilt? I'm not entirely sure. I like to think it's the former, because let's be real, the idea that it's all in her head is a bit of a cliché. Plus, Atropos, with its lost civilization, is such a fascinating, beautiful place to explore that I want it to be real. At the same time, I couldn't help but notice something. Celine's suit looks like a very futuristic evolution of modern astronaut gear. But the astronaut figure itself, the symbol of her dream, wears something much closer to what real astronauts would probably wear today. That could support the idea that everything on Atropos and her journey there is just a projection of Celine's damaged mind. But either way, Celine is trapped. Whether it's a real planet or her own psychological construct, she's stuck in an endless loop, condemned to relive her guilt over and over again. You have to give Housemarque credit. They managed to combine brutal, unforgiving gameplay with a deeply personal story without it ever feeling forced or cringe. And for me, a father of a little kid, the story hits even harder. Returnal is one of those rare games that stays with you for weeks, months, maybe even years after the credits roll. At least until Saros comes out, and hopefully takes its place. I also feel like Returnal is a very underrated game. Maybe I'm wrong, but it never really exploded the way it deserved to. Maybe it was the PlayStation 5 exclusivity. Maybe the niche gameplay loop scared people away. But trust me when I say this. Returnal is something special. And that's exactly why I'm so excited for Saros, a game that's expected to surpass its predecessor, however impossible that might sound to me. It's coming soon, and I'm here for it. Hit me baby one more time. So what about you? Did you finish Returnal, or did you never make it past the fucking beds in the overgrown ruins? And are you buying Saros? Let me know in the comments, I'll see you there.